Sam Nunberg, who was an advisor in the early weeks of the Trump campaign, has been ordered to turn over documents to a grand jury in the Russia investigation. Amir Levy, Washington. It began with a subpoena. It ended with a question about whether its recipient was drunk on television. Sam Nunberg, a one-time Trump campaign aide who recently met with investigators for the special counsel, set cable news alight on Monday when he declared that he was subpoenaed to go before a grand jury on Friday, but that he was unlikely to appear or to provide documents he was ordered to hand over. He indicated he did not know what the special counsel, Robert S. Mueller III, was seeking by ordering him to appear before the grand jury and to turn over a number of documents. There was no way to authenticate the subpoena. Mr. Mueller's office declined to comment. But Mr. Nunberg said he was unconcerned about the potential for being arrested. By mid-afternoon, he had been interviewed on MSNBC and CNN. Fox News soon joined in with coverage. On air, Mr. Nunberg denigrated Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the White House press secretary, as a slob. Twitter cataloged his insults, mesmerized by his repeat performances. One CNN host asked him if he had been drinking. A portion of the subpoena ordering Sam Nunberg to appear before a grand jury. By evening, Mr. Nunberg told reporters he might comply with Mr. Mueller's demand after all. Unless he doesn't, of course. And so it went with Mr. Nunberg, a protege of the self-described dirty trickster Roger J. Stone Jr., who has been a focus of aspects of the various investigations into possible Russian collusion with the Trump campaign. Part of the subpoena document, which Mr. Nunberg provided to the New York Times, is dated February 27 and makes no mention of requiring him to appear before the grand jury. It calls only for him to preserve documents from November 1, 2015, through the present related to several people connected to the Trump campaign. They include President Trump, the departing White House Communications Director, Hope Hicks, the former campaign manager Corey Lewandowski, Stephen K. Bannon, the president's former chief strategist, Mr. Trump's longtime bodyguard, Keith Schiller, the former Trump Organization lawyer Michael D. Cohen, and Mr. Stone, a longtime confidant of Mr. Trump's. They have requested a ridiculous amount of documents, Mr. Nunberg said. Should I spend 30 hours producing these? I don't know what they have. They may very well have something on the president, but they are unfairly targeting Roger Stone. The subpoena also demands any documents related to Carter Page, a former Trump campaign foreign policy advisor who was secretly surveilled by the Justice Department as part of the Russia investigation, as well as Paul Manafort, the former Trump campaign chairman, and his deputy, Rick Gates. Mr. Manafort has been indicted on a string of money laundering and fraud charges, and Mr. Gates recently pleaded guilty and agreed to cooperate with Mr. Mueller's investigators. The list of people about whom Mr. Mueller is seeking information from Mr. Nunberg raises questions about his target, as does the time frame. Mr. Nunberg was fired by Mr. Trump during the summer of 2015 and thus was gone from the campaign in November. And he and Mr. Lewandowski are known to be combatants. Still, Mr. Nunberg, whose mentor, Mr. Stone, goes by the motto that all press is good press, spent hours on Monday engaged in a media tour with the Times, the Washington Post, CNN and MSNBC, describing his plans to flout the subpoena and professing his lack of concern about what could happen to him. I was fired within 6 weeks of the campaign's start, Mr. Nunberg told the Times, despite having saved Mr. Trump during a fight with Senator John McCain, Republican of Arizona, that summer after Mr. Trump's remark that Mr. McCain was not a war hero because he was captured in Vietnam. Mr. McCain was shot down during the war and imprisoned for more than 5 years in Hanoi, refusing early release even after being beaten repeatedly. Mr. Nunberg added that the president often sounded like a moron, but this whole thing is a witch hunt. Mr. Nunberg said he anticipated his lawyer, Patrick J. Brackley, would fire him for speaking publicly. Mr. Brackley did not immediately respond to an email asking whether that was the case. Mr. Nunberg could avoid appearing before the grand jury if his lawyer sent prosecutors a letter asserting his Fifth Amendment rights not to incriminate himself. If that does not happen, Mr. Mueller's prosecutors could ask a judge for a bench warrant for Mr. Nunberg's arrest. Mr. Nunberg has spoken with the Senate Intelligence Committee in its own investigation into Russian election meddling, according to a person familiar with the matter. He has not spoken with the House Intelligence Committee, according to 3 of its members. Its own examination of Moscow interference has languished amid partisan infighting. Mr. Stone, asked for comment, said he was not surprised that his information was being sought. I was part of the Trump campaign, have been the president's friend and advisor for decades, and would expect that Mueller's team would ask for any documents or emails sent or written by me, Mr. Stone said in a text message. But let me reiterate, I have no knowledge or involvement in Russian collusion or any other inappropriate act. Nicholas Fondos contributed reporting. A version of this article appears in print on March 6, 2018, on page A18 of the New York edition with the headline, Ex-Trump aide says he'll refuse grand jury order.